My family told me, "You're not welcome at Christmas. It's only for parents now." I just smiled, because they had no idea what I had planned. Stick with me while I share my story. And if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Brinley Carter. I'm 28, an ER nurse who works 12-hour shifts, holidays included, saving strangers who will never know my name. Maybe that's why it stung so badly when my own family decided I didn't matter. It wasn't shocking, just confirming. They've always made it clear who the real stars of the family were: my older brother Marshall and his wife Dana. They had kids, a big house, and that perfect Instagram Christmas vibe my mother, Lorraine, lived for. Me. I didn't have kids yet, so in their eyes, I was a placeholder. Extra. Optional. Still, I didn't expect to be outright excluded. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon. I was sitting in the hospital break room, sipping terrible vending machine coffee, when I saw the notification for the family group email. At first, I smiled, thinking it was the usual holiday plans. Then I opened it. The subject line hit me first: Christmas update for parents. Inside, I read the words twice just to be sure I wasn't imagining them. This year, Christmas is only for parents. Child-free adults should make other plans. Thank you for understanding. I didn't even get my own message. It was a mass email. My mother didn't even bother to address me personally. I stared at the screen for a long time before I typed, "No worries. Hope everyone has a great holiday." Simple. Polite. Exactly what they expected from quiet, easy-to-overlook Brinley. But inside, something shifted, quietly, sharply, permanently. This wasn't the first blow. My family had been cutting pieces out of me for years. They praised Marshall even when he messed up, ignored me even when I showed up, leaned on me financially and emotionally, but never gave a shred of acknowledgement. And the worst part, I let it happen. I told myself it was family, that I just needed to be patient, that one day they'd finally see me. But when I read that email, something in me stopped waiting. I closed my phone and felt a strange calm settling over me. Not anger, not sadness, clarity. Because the truth was, this Christmas wasn't the real problem. It was just the moment that finally exposed everything else. Everything they'd hidden. Everything they believed I'd never find out. They thought excluding me would hurt me into silence. They didn't know I had already uncovered secrets they prayed would stay buried. Secrets that would shift the ground under their feet. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to stop protecting them and start protecting myself. I grew up in a house where love was something you earned, not something you received. My father, Reed Carter, was physically present but emotionally vacant, a man who treated silence like a language and distance like a form of parenting. He drifted through our childhood like a ghost in work boots, barely noticing anything unless it involved my brother, Marshall. My mother, Lorraine, filled the void with her own brand of control, polished smiles, matching family outfits, and a constant obsession with how we looked to the outside world. If our family photo appeared perfect, then in her mind, it meant we were perfect. And in those pictures, Marshall always stood front and center. I was the blurry background. Marshall was the son every parent bragged about, charismatic, loud, always praised whether he earned it or not. My mother worshipped him. My father tolerated everyone else. I learned early not to expect anything from either of them. When I needed comfort, I gave it to myself. When I needed guidance, I found it in books or teachers or anyone but them. I practically raised myself emotionally, piecing together my own sense of worth from moments no one else saw. Ironically, when the family went through financial trouble during my early 20s, it wasn't Marshall who stepped up. It was me. While I was working back-to-back nursing shifts, still paying off student loans, I quietly sent money to help them cover bills. I even paid off a medical debt my father didn't want anyone to know he had. They took the deposits, thanked the family in vague messages, and pretended the money came from some collective effort that magically excluded the daughter who was actually making the payments. They never acknowledged it, not once. They acted like it was simply my duty, like I was an extension of their convenience rather than their child. The only person who ever made me feel seen was my grandmother, Maribel Harper. She was sunlight in human form, gentle and wise, the only adult who ever bothered to ask what I dreamed of. She used to tell me, "Brinley, you carry a quiet strength your parents will never understand." When she passed away, a part of me dimmed. But something strange happened after her death, a tension in the family I couldn't quite place. Everything about her will seemed rushed, vague, and off. I pushed the unease away at the time, too heartbroken to question anything deeper. But after that Christmas email, the feeling came roaring back. The rule, Christmas is now only for parents, didn't make sense. My cousin Paige didn't have kids either, yet she was invited. Marshall's friend and his fiancée, also child-free, were included. It wasn't a rule, it was a message. Only I was being pushed out. The longer I thought about it, the more it felt targeted. Purposeful, like they were clearing space, not for family tradition, but for something they didn't want me near. And for the first time, I started wondering what exactly they were trying to hide. The first snowfall of December crunched under my boots as I walked toward my grandmother's old cabin, a place that had always felt more like home than the house I grew up in. After she passed, no one bothered to clean it out. My mother said she was too busy, and Marshall said he couldn't deal with the emotional weight. So it sat untouched for months, with dust settling where memories once lived. I came on my day off, expecting nothing more than boxes of old quilts and faded photographs. I didn't know that one visit would change everything. The cabin smelled like pine and lemon cleaner, exactly as Maribel left it. I paused in the doorway, half expecting her to appear in her rocker, knitting something bright and unnecessary. But the room was still, quiet, waiting. I started sorting through shelves, packing away clothes for donation, stacking books into neat piles. Hours passed before I noticed a small wooden chest tucked behind the dresser, almost hidden. It was locked, old-fashioned, with a brass latch worn from years of use. I remembered it vaguely. Grandma never let anyone touch it. She once told me, "Some things are meant to be opened only when the heart is ready." Well, my heart wasn't ready, but my curiosity was. After searching the cabin, I found the tiny key inside a teacup in her kitchen cabinet. It fit perfectly. The lock clicked open with a soft sigh, like the chest had been holding its breath. Inside were neatly folded letters, some addressed to my grandmother, others written by her. Beneath them was an envelope stamped revised, private. My breath caught. I opened it carefully and found a handwritten revision dated just 3 months before she died. In clear loops of her familiar cursive, she wrote that the cabin, her most cherished property, and her remaining savings were to go directly to me. Not to be shared. Not to be sold. Mine. I sat back, stunned. That wasn't the will my family showed me after the funeral. The official document had split everything evenly between my mother and Marshall, with a vague mention that I would be taken care of. Taken care of, as if I were some distant cousin, not the granddaughter who spent every weekend with her. Under the will revision was a folded note. I recognized her handwriting instantly. "Brinley, this place is where you learn to breathe. It belongs with the one who carries peace, not chaos. I trust you to honor it." My throat tightened. That single line held more love than anything my parents had ever given me. As the truth settled in, a cold realization followed. Someone had deliberately hidden this. Someone tampered with the will. And only 2 people had both access and motive, Lorraine and Marshall. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply put everything back in the chest, locked it, and slipped it into my bag. If they were willing to erase me from a holiday, what else were they willing to erase? I walked out of the cabin with a new purpose. Not revenge, not yet. Just clarity. I would gather proof quietly. I wouldn't confront anyone until I had everything. For the first time, I wasn't the overlooked Carter. I was the one holding the truth. I waited 2 days before speaking to anyone, letting the truth sit heavy but clear. The more I replayed the will revision in my mind, the more obvious it became. Someone in my family had crossed a line long before the Christmas email. I needed answers from someone who wasn't directly involved, someone who had always hovered around the edges of our family's affairs. That someone was Edith Malone, my grandmother's closest friend and the woman who practically helped raise my mother. Edith was kind, sharp, and had a habit of knowing more than she ever admitted. When I showed up at her porch, she opened the door with a cautious smile, as if she already knew why I was there. Inside, her house smelled like cinnamon and old books. She poured tea without asking, then sat across from me with a sigh that felt like the start of a confession. "I found a locked box at the cabin," I began, watching her reaction closely. It had a will revision, one naming me as the sole heir to the cabin and Grandma's savings. Edith closed her eyes, her shoulders sinking. "I was afraid you'd find out this way." A cold rush went through me. "So you knew." She nodded slowly, worry etched into every line of her face. "Your grandmother told me she made changes." She trusted a lawyer friend of mine to draft it precisely because she worried your mother and brother would fight it. Edith hesitated, then added softly, "They did fight it, Brinley. Hard." My heart pounded, but my voice stayed steady. "What did they do?" "They pressured the lawyer your grandmother originally hired," she said, her voice trembling. "Your mother insisted the handwritten revision was just a draft and not legally binding. Marshall backed her up, saying you were too emotional after the funeral to handle anything. They told the lawyer to reinterpret the original will, to make it equal." Equal. The word felt like poison. I asked the question even though I already knew the answer. "They hid the real will from me?" Edith nodded. "They didn't want you to have that cabin. They said you wouldn't use it properly. They said Marshall had a family and you didn't. They said it belonged with the people who would carry on the Carter legacy." I stared at the table, willing myself not to shake. Betrayal wasn't new in my family, but this was intentional, coordinated, cruel. And the worst part, they were comfortable doing it, confident I wouldn't question them. But they underestimated how much strength a quiet person can build over years of being ignored. I thanked Edith, hugged her, and walked out with a calm I didn't quite understand. The pain was real, but so was the clarity. Everything was undeniable now. So I started documenting. Dates, emails, conversations, screenshots, copies of every item in the chest. I backed it all up in 3 places. I didn't want a public fight. No social media explosions. No shouting matches. I wanted something colder. Something exact. A plan that would hit where my family cared most. Their reputation, their entitlement, and their assumption that I would always stay silent. For once, I wasn't going to. The week after my visit with Edith felt strangely calm, like the air right before a storm finally breaks. I kept my routine, working long ER shifts, answering texts with the same polite tone my family expected. But inside, everything had shifted. I was no longer wondering if my family betrayed me. I was collecting proof of how far they went. The confirmation came unexpectedly, through a group chat message from my mother. She sent a cheerful reminder about the annual Carter Christmas gathering. My breath hitched when I read the location, Grandma Maribel's cabin. The same cabin legally meant for me. The same cabin they insisted I had no right to. Lorraine wrote, "Everyone needs to arrive early to decorate. And remember, this year is only for parents. Let's make it perfect." I stared at the message in disbelief. Not only were they using property they'd knowingly stolen, they were using it to exclude me. It wasn't ignorance. It was arrogance. They truly believed I was too soft, too passive, too Brinley to ever push back. They had no idea who I was becoming. That afternoon, during a slow shift at the hospital, I finally made the call. I'd researched attorneys for days, looking for someone who specialized in estate discrepancies and contested wills. That's how I found Kellen Avery, a young but highly recommended lawyer with a reputation for being meticulous and relentless. Exactly what I needed. We met the next morning in his small office lined with law books and framed certificates. He listened carefully as I explained everything: my grandmother's will, the hidden revision, Edith's confession. Then I placed the letters and the handwritten document on his desk. He put on his glasses, read every line slowly, then leaned back with a long exhale. "Brinley, this is valid. More than valid, this is airtight. If what Edith told you checks out, your mother and brother knowingly suppressed a legally binding revision." A mix of relief and sadness washed over me. "Can anything be done?" He gave a small, confident smile. "More than you think." Over the next hour, he walked me through the process: filings, notifications, verification steps. He never asked if I was sure. He could see it in my face. What struck me most was his calm certainty. He didn't treat me like the forgotten child of the Carter family. He treated me like the rightful owner. And then he said something that lit a spark in me. "If we file today, the cabin legally reverts to you within 2 weeks." 2 weeks. Christmas week. I left his office with the paperwork in my bag and a strange sense of purpose in my chest. Not anger, clarity. My family had built this lie assuming I would never question them. So I decided to let them enjoy their fantasy a little longer. Let them decorate my cabin. Let them cook in my kitchen. Let them brag to guests about a holiday I wasn't allowed to attend. Because this year, Christmas was coming. And so was the truth. I spent the days leading up to Christmas moving in absolute silence. Not a single hint, not a word spoken out of rhythm. My family still believed I was working overtime through the holidays, too busy and too child-free, to be part of anything meaningful. They didn't know I had already arranged my schedule, taken 2 days off, and planned something far colder than an argument. On Christmas Eve, long before anyone arrived, I drove up the winding road to the cabin. Snow covered the trees like powdered sugar, and the air was so still it almost felt like the world was holding its breath. I unlocked the door with the spare key my grandmother had once given me, something I had never returned, and stepped inside the space that was finally legally mine. I walked through the room slowly, documenting everything. Fresh grocery bags on the counter, a printed schedule taped to the fridge, decorations already scattered around. They had been here earlier in the week, using the property without permission, confident they had every right. I took pictures, time-stamped videos, a full walkthrough. Kellen had been very clear. Don't provoke them. Don't warn them. Just gather proof and let the documents speak for you. So I did exactly that. When I finished, I stood in the middle of the living room and rehearsed what I planned to say when they arrived. I didn't want to raise my voice. That would make it emotional, and emotional was the version of me they used to dismiss. No, this time I would speak plainly, cleanly, like someone presenting facts in a courtroom. You're using property that doesn't belong to you. The will was altered. I have the revision. You lied to me. You hid everything. You will leave tonight. Simple. I repeated the phrases over and over until they felt like stone, unbreakable, steady, hard. Outside, tire tracks cut through the snow. My family began arriving hours before the event, laughing, dragging decorations, shouting instructions across the driveway. I stayed hidden in the back bedroom while they bustled around the house, unaware of my presence. Through the thin walls, I heard every word. Lorraine's crisp voice. Honestly, it's better Brinley's not coming. She'd just stand around awkwardly. Marshall's loud laugh. She never belonged here anyway. Dana chimed in, fake sympathy dripping from her tone. Maybe next year she'll finally understand that holidays are for families with kids. Another laugh. Another jab. Another moment proving they had never seen me as equal. Not even close. But the difference now? Their words didn't cut. They clarified. They sharpened the boundary I had needed for years. Kellen texted me at 4:17 p.m. Documents ready. Serving within the hour. You stay calm. I slipped my phone into my pocket and inhaled deeply, grounding myself as footsteps and holiday chatter filled the house. They had no idea I was already inside. They had no idea their perfect Christmas was about to collapse. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid. By early evening, the cabin was glowing with warm lights, laughter, and the kind of fake holiday cheer my family was famous for. From the hallway where I waited, I could hear them moving from room to room, clinking dishes, hanging ornaments, bragging loudly about their exclusive parent Christmas, as if the world revolved around their children and curated image. I heard Lorraine greeting guests at the door with that brittle smile she'd perfected over the years. "Oh, Brinley," she said when someone asked about me. "She's doing what she always does, working." She never understood what family holidays are really about. I felt the sting, but it didn't shake me. Tonight wasn't about hurt. It was about truth. When I finally stepped out from the hallway and into the open living room, the reaction was immediate. Chairs scraped the floor. Someone gasped. A toddler dropped a cookie. Every pair of eyes snapped toward me, confusion mixing with disbelief. Lorraine's face drained of color. "Brinley? What are you doing here?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smile. I simply looked at her with the calmness of someone who no longer feared being misunderstood. "I'm here because we need to talk." The room fell so silent that even the crackling fireplace seemed to pause. People shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances. This was not the drama they expected with their cider and gingerbread. Marshall recovered first, puffing up like he always did when he felt control slipping. "No, absolutely not. You don't get to walk in here and make a scene. This is a private gathering, Brinley. You're not on the list." I held his gaze unmoving. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to speak. And I want everyone to hear it." Dana, standing behind him with her arms crossed, shook her head. "Brinley, maybe this isn't the time." "It's exactly the time," I answered softly. Marshall stepped toward me, trying to tower over me like he used to when we were kids. "Leave. Right now. This isn't your place." That was the moment I let the first truth land. I straightened my shoulders, grounded my feet, and said, clearly enough for every guest to hear, "Actually, Marshall, it is my place." A wave of murmurs swept through the room. Lorraine blinked rapidly, eyes darting from me to the guests, mortified that a crack in their image was showing. "I'm not going anywhere," I continued, voice steady. And before this evening moves forward, we're going to address a few things. Marshall opened his mouth again, ready to shout, but I cut him off with a quiet firmness that surprised even me. Stop. Just stop. The command froze him. For the first time in years, he didn't have the upper hand. For the first time ever, they were all listening to me. And the real confrontation was only beginning. Brinley didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The moment she stepped into the cabin's warm glow, the tree lit, the food steaming on the table, her family laughing about the parent-only Christmas. The entire room froze as if someone had sliced the world in half. Lorraine's face fell first, then Marshall's, then Dana's. But Brinley kept walking until she stood at the fireplace, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. I'd like to share something with all of you, she said softly, her voice steady enough to make every guest look at her instead of at the Carters. Lorraine stepped forward, panic already leaking through her forced smile. This is not the time, Brinley. You need to leave. No, Brinley said, pulling a folder from her bag. Actually, this is the perfect time. She laid the first document on the table, the real will. Gasps fluttered across the room as she unfolded the pages, letting the title and her father's signature show clearly. Marshall's skin drained of color. This is my father's actual, original will, she said, turning it so everyone could see. The one my family hid. Guests exchanged looks. Someone whispered, "Wait, hid." Next, she removed a small envelope, yellowed, creased from time, sealed with her father's handwriting. She opened it slowly, almost reverently, and pulled out the note. My dad wrote this, she said. A message for me, explaining why he changed the will, and why he trusted me with this cabin. Dana rushed forward, tears already forming. Brinley, please, you don't understand. Mom and Dad were just manipulating me, Brinley said. Lying to me? Excluding me from a home that wasn't theirs. Dana froze, exposed. Then Brinley set down the final stack, legal documents stamped and official. This confirms that as of this week, the cabin is legally mine. Entirely. Permanently. No contest. Lorraine's hand flew to her chest. Marshall sank into a chair, staring at the floor as if it might swallow him. Dana covered her mouth, shaking her head. You can't do this, Lorraine whispered. We already planned Christmas. Everyone is here. You're ruining. You ruined it when you pretended this place belonged to you, Brinley replied calmly. Right on cue, the cabin door opened again. This time for Attorney Kellen, briefcase in hand, coat dusted with snow. He nodded to Brinley before addressing the room. Everything Miss Carter has stated is legally accurate. The property transfer is complete. And, he added, giving Marshall a pointed look, there will be further investigation into the concealed will. Guests stared at the Carters as if seeing them for the first time, greedy, selfish, deceitful. One of the families quietly gathered their coats. Another murmured an apology to Brinley as they slipped out. Brinley didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply stood there, letting the truth settle like snow over the wreckage her family had created. For the first time in years, she felt free. The room was thick with silence, heavy as the snow falling outside. Lorraine collapsed onto the couch, her hands trembling as she buried her face in a tissue. Brinley, she whispered, voice cracking, please. I only did it for the family image. I needed this cabin to show everyone we were perfect. I didn't mean to hurt you. Brinley knelt beside her mother, her expression calm, measured. Lorraine, image isn't worth stealing from your own daughter, she said softly. You made choices. You've lied, manipulated, and hidden the truth. And now, you need to accept the consequences. Lorraine sobbed, nodding furiously, as if acknowledging a weight she hadn't wanted to carry. Brinley didn't offer hugs or apologies. She had learned long ago that placating people who intentionally hurt you only perpetuates the cycle. She was firm, steady, and entirely in control. Marshall paced back and forth, fists clenched, jaw tight. This is ridiculous. This is absurd. I didn't do anything wrong. It's everyone else's fault. It's Kellen's fault, Edith's fault, even Brinley's fault somehow. His voice grew louder with each denial, echoing off the cabin walls. Dana pressed a hand to his arm, whispering, trying to calm him, but Marshall barely noticed. He was consumed by anger, incapable of reflection, unwilling to face the truth. Brinley rose from her spot near the fireplace and addressed them both. Marshall, Lorraine, you have 10 minutes to gather your things. You must vacate the cabin immediately. And understand this. You are not welcome to return unless I personally invite you, under terms that respect honesty and accountability. Her words were neither cruel nor vengeful. They were simply the boundary she had been denied for years. A pause followed as the gravity of her authority settled over the room. Guests exchanged glances, awkwardly shifting from foot to foot. No one knew exactly how to react, but they sensed it was serious. The silence broke only when one of the visiting cousins quietly stepped forward, holding a bag of decorations. We can help pack," she said hesitantly. Others began to follow suit. Plates, ornaments, and personal belongings were carefully gathered, stacked, and loaded into cars. Guests murmured polite but awkward comments, quietly witnessing the dismantling of the Carter's facade. Lorraine tried to argue at first, her voice rising in panic. "Brinley, please. This isn't fair." "No," Brinley interrupted, her tone gentle but final. "This is fair. You made your choices. Now live with them." Outside, the snow had turned to a soft flurry. One by one, cars were loaded and started up. Marshall barked orders, Lorraine wept quietly, Dana hovered nervously beside him. The line of vehicles began to snake down the driveway, tires crunching against the white blanket, and Brinley watched from the front steps. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply stood still, feeling the weight of years of neglect, betrayal, and manipulation lifting with every vehicle that disappeared from view. When the last car rounded the corner and the cabin stood empty except for her, Brinley inhaled the crisp winter air. For the first time in her life, the space felt truly hers, quiet, peaceful, and unclaimed by anyone who didn't belong there. It was more than a house. It was a symbolic shift in her life, a new chapter, written on her terms, finally free from the shadows of her family's control. The cabin was quiet again, save for the soft crackle of the fireplace and the occasional whisper of wind through the pine trees outside. Brinley sat in her grandmother's old rocking chair, a cup of steaming tea in her hands, letting the warmth seep into her bones. For the first time in years, the space felt like her own, not borrowed, not controlled by someone else's agenda, but truly hers. The chaos of the morning had faded into stillness, and with it, a strange peace settled over her. She wandered through the rooms, noticing small details she had never seen before. The way sunlight caught the dust on the wooden shelves, the faint smell of lemon polish lingering in the kitchen, the little scratches on the floor that told stories of long-ago winters. She smiled quietly to herself, thinking of her grandmother, of the weekends spent here as a child, learning to bake cookies and fold quilts. She began making small changes to honor Maribel's memory, lining the bookshelves with her grandmother's favorite novels, hanging a framed photo of the two of them on the mantel, and placing a tiny vase of fresh pine and holly on the kitchen counter. Each addition felt like reclaiming a piece of her own history, a way to ground herself in the life she had earned. She didn't need visitors, didn't crave company. The cabin was her sanctuary, a place where she could reflect on everything that had led to this moment. The betrayal of her mother, the arrogance of her brother, the lies and manipulations, they were all behind her now. And yet, she didn't harbor hatred. She carried the events with quiet clarity, understanding that her power came not from revenge itself, but from finally acknowledging the truth and standing in it. Brinley left the door unlocked, but it was a gesture of principle, not invitation. She didn't seek reconciliation. She didn't want apologies or empty words. She wanted honesty, accountability, and the knowledge that if they ever returned, it would be on her terms and with integrity. That was the boundary she had never been allowed to set, and now she held it without hesitation. Sipping her tea, she walked outside to the snow-covered deck, breathing in the crisp winter air. She watched the evening sky darken, the first stars of the night appearing over the treetops. For the first time, she felt steady, independent, free. She didn't need validation from anyone. She didn't need approval from a family that had never truly seen her. She had built something stronger, a life anchored in her own worth, her own choices, and her own values. Inside, the cabin glowed softly with the light of the fireplace and the tree she had decorated alone. It wasn't perfect, it was lived in, real, and full of her energy. Brinley smiled faintly, letting herself feel the depth of the accomplishment. Not triumph, not gloating, just clarity. She was no longer a silent observer in her own life. She was the author, and this chapter was hers alone. And for the first time in years, Brinley felt exactly what she had been waiting for: whole, seen, and unmistakably free. Do you think Brinley made the right choice by standing her ground and taking what was rightfully hers? Or should she have tried to mend things with her family first? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if stories like this inspire you, Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another tale of truth, justice, and quiet strength.